The Fake Baseball Podcast is now brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Sign up today with promo code FAKEBASEBALL to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. I love those pick'em games. Just go in, pick higher or lower, whatever you like. If you've been playing the higher on hits for Luis Arraez the last 8 games, you'd be a very happy man right now because those seem to be automatic. So again, go over to underdogfantasy.com. Use code FAKEBASEBALL when you sign up for a 50% deposit match up to $500 plus an instant pick'em special. Go check that out now. What is up, everybody? We are here for the Thursday episode 52 of Fake Baseball. If you are watching in the live, you will see that there's no Dylan. Dylan is off coaching baseball, but it is Blake Meyer as always, and I am joined by today's special guest, Mr. Jeff Erickson of RotoWire. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Blake, I'm doing great. I'm talking baseball. Life is good.
It's really hard to complain about anything when you're talking baseball. It's just this is like a happy place. It's home.
Exactly.
I will say I had the pleasure of meeting Jeff at Tout Wars this year. I have to thank you again for inviting me to be a part of Tout Wars, and I got to meet you at Dave & Buster's out there, and then you were at my draft as well. It was an absolute blast and a pleasure to meet you. I was feeling a little out of place when I got there. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really know. I hadn't met anybody in person yet, and I kind of showed up late, and you were nice enough to sit me down, introduce me to some people, and it made me feel much more welcome. So I appreciate you for that, sir. That was awesome.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And hey, I was there at one point in time, 1998. I mentioned this earlier today on my my podcast I just finished with Mike Carter and Chris Torres. I was that guy in 1998 at Labor, myself and Peter Schenke, where we were introduced, and people were, very welcoming then. So it's just my turn to, pass it on. And someday you'll be welcoming in the new guys in the industry.
I hope I'm around for long enough for that to happen. But for those of you that are listening in the live, if you are on YouTube right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on. If you are on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I'm one of those weird people that still says that. If you hit the like button, follow, all of that goes a long way towards helping us continue to grow this podcast. But if you listen to Tuesday's episode, we had Nick Pollack of Pitcher List on, and we talked pitching, because what better to talk with Nick than pitching? And so today I had Jeff on so that we could talk some hitters on the waiver right now. I wanted to go over some guys that are a little less rostered, that have had some fantasy relevance as of late. And so getting right into it, Tommy Pham has been kind of on a little bit of a roll for Chicago. He seems to have, not that Chicago is that good of a baseball team still, but he seems to have injected a little bit of life into that lineup, and he's found himself once again a serviceable hitter, hitting .316 with 3 home runs and 3 stolen bases so far after hitting 16 home runs and 22 stolen bases last year. Jeff, do you think that Tommy can continue to have some fantasy relevance going forward, maybe in anything outside of a deeper league, or is he still just kind of a deeper league target that you enjoy when he produces?
I think he could still have relevance in 12-team leagues. He had 22 stolen bases last year, and that plays, right? Especially in an environment where we need more stolen bases. You look at last year, 16 and 22. He's never he's not a 316 hitter. He's living his best life right now, but he's getting ample playing time. He's going to give you speed all along. He's got a little semblance of power, and you just ride him until he, loses playing time or maybe gets dealt to another team. He's the typical type of guy that gets signed by a bad team and then dealt to a contender. And, last year we saw that happen a little bit there. We got traded to Arizona. He can even contribute then. He's more often going to be a platoon player late, but for right now, I think he's a perfectly usable guy. And your bottom spots of your roster are Mr. Right Nows. They're not Mr. Rights. We're not looking for a marriage here. We're looking for someone to get us through the next month.
I love that. And he's been doing that too. Talking to right now, since May 8th, he's hitting 339 with 5 extra base hits and 3 stolen bases with a strikeout rate below 20%. We're big on points leagues on this podcast. Great points league player right now. You love total bases. You love a strikeout rate under 20%. Obviously, the batting average plays in any kind of league, but he's performing. And I like what you said about if he gets dealt, because I've kind of had the mindset that he does fit that perfect Chicago White Sox going to trade him at the deadline player. He's too old for them to think about him being part of the future, but he still has enough value now to get something in return. And somebody's going to want him, maybe the Seattle Mariners. I live out here in the Seattle area and kind of just like to imagine everybody's going to come play in Seattle.
Well, I like how your Mariners are.
I like Pham. He is. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I love how the Mariners are in first place right now. I just had a long talk with my brothers this morning about how Julio might be struggling, but the Mariners are still 3 games ahead in first place with Julio struggling. So the future's looking bright right now. Absolutely. I hear you're a Cincinnati Reds fan. Is that true?
It is true. It has been true all my life. So back in the Big Red Machine even days, that's when my fandom started in the late 70s. I vaguely remember 1976. Those were my first baseball memories. George Foster, in 1977, hitting the 52 homers. There were some fun teams back then. So, and some not so fun teams ever since 1990, but that's okay. We stick with our team.
You got to be enjoying baseball this year, though. You guys are a pretty electric team. Ellie's obviously fun. Spencer Steer, I think, is kind of an underrated player. He's a great all-around guy. I'm going to throw you a slight curveball just because it clicked in my head. Jonathan India, do you think he finishes the year in Cincy, or do you think he gets dealt? Because I know there was kind of some rumors before the season.
Well, that was before they lost like 6 players. And unfortunately, all that depth that the Reds had is gone. It's been eviscerated. We look at Matt McClain as the big one. I think that's the one that cost the team the most. But Noelvi Marte getting suspended in spring training was devastating. TJ Friedel's on the second major injury. Christian Encarnacion Strand is out. We just saw your old friend Jake Fraley the other day with a hit by pitch on the hand. It's tough. They had like all these platoon advantages, and now they have nothing like it. We were wondering, why did they sign Jeimer Candelario? How is he going to get room to play? Well, that's not a problem, unfortunately, because they just have everybody getting hurt there, and it's been tough to watch them lately. The month of May has been very cruel. They're down to 20-30 after today's extra inning loss to the Padres.
That is true. I watched a little bit of the game when I was at my day job today. I'm fortunate enough to have a job where I can kind of check in on baseball whenever I want. And I watched Ellie strike out on the knuckleball with bases loaded. And I was like, God, that hurt my Tout Wars heart a little bit, because that's the only league that I have him in. And I was like, I could really use something right here. And but I mean, watching him strike out on the knuckleball, I did have the feeling where I feel like if you strike out on a knuckleball, it should just not count. There should be like an asterisk next to it. And if you hit a home run off a knuckleball, it should count as 2, because I don't know how anybody ever actually hits one of those. Like Lucky, maybe. I don't get how anybody actually hits one.
Yeah, that's for sure. Going back to Pham, and we'll talk about the Reds too, and all the teams that are losing right now. They're going to have more of a green light. The Reds run like crazy. Tommy Pham is going to have a total green light to run because, there's nothing really, they have nothing to lose. They're going to, you saw this a couple of times, like with the Orioles before they really got good, like they'd bring in some guys that, had a lot of speed, weren't necessarily great ball players, but they accumulated the stolen bases because they just had this total green light. And I think that's going to remain the case with Pham too.
I hope so, because he does still have to speed. I mean, 22 stolen bases last year is not nothing. Like, it's even with the bigger bases, that's still a good number to steal, especially at his age. I'm 36. I could never imagine stealing even 1 base. So to be essentially as old as me and stealing 22 is impressive. My bat could never. But moving on from Tommy Pham, next one is a player close to my heart. Dylan Moore has showed up this year as the 2020 version of himself. He played quite a bit back in that weird COVID season, and he was the man. And it sucked for like 3 years. And now he got a boost in playing time because JP Crawford's injury. So I guess my question for you, Jeff, is now that JP is back, they're likely going to find ways to still get him in the lineup because he can kind of play a little bit of everything. Do you think he can kind of keep this same fantasy relevance moving forward, or is like a JP Crawford coming back going to maybe hurt him a little bit in the playing time department?
I think that and just normal gravity will probably diminish Moore's playing time eventually. With the case with Dylan Moore too, like even in his bad years, he's always run. Like in 21, 22, 20 plus stolen bases each of those years. That plays, especially in the deeper the league you get. But I think he's the type of guy that okay, he's running hot right now, but I think with Crawford back, with others back, it's going to be a little bit harder for him. They'll play him until he gets cold. I think that, but he will get cold. I think that's kind of the problem. Scott Service himself said, hey, we're going to use different lineups every day. And that I think Moore is one of those guys, like he'll play now because they're just thirsty for offense. They're thirsty for guys that can do anything right now with the way Haniger has been struggling so much, the way, Mitch Garver has been struggling so much. They'll find ways to get more in there for the while because they just need any sort of offense. I mean, they got shut out today. I think Luis Gil is actually really legitimately good, and that's why. But at the same time, they've been striking out as a ton as a team. Unfortunately, Moore is one of those guys that also strikes out a decent amount too. So I don't think that goes away.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. And it is kind of, I know like the fandom side of things has kind of been one of those things we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop with Moore, which like you said, it's going to happen at some point, but like that 2020 season is a prime example. He's shown that in these like shorter stretches, he can be a legitimate producer of counting stats, extra base hits, all of that. And he's got great eligibility, corner infield, he's got middle infield and outfield eligibility. So you can play him a little bit everywhere. I know we have our listener league. I have him over there in a 16-team league, and he's been producing very well. Rostered in just 16% of Yahoo leagues and 3% of ESPN leagues. Again, ESPN does have that weird kind of very low roster rate for a lot of these waiver wire eligible guys. I do think he is the prime example of add him and play him now while he's hot type of guy. But feel free to cut him when it does cool down.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
then right. I'm flying through these right now. One that I want to just get right to asking you about. I haven't paid as much attention to him. I have certain people that have asked me about him. Shout out Uncle Ted. He has asked me about him. Jake Meyers has been pretty hot as of late. But I know like Chas McCormick just came back. Is Jake Meyers going to kind of be in that same Dylan Moore playing while he's hot category? Or do you think that there could be some longer term relevance to Jake Meyers?
I think it's more the former than the latter, but McCormick was so cold before he got hurt. It's tough to say. Myers does play good defense. I also think that there's a universe where both of them can coexist. Unfortunately, that would require Joey Loperfido going through a pretty extended slump for that to happen, I think. But Myers is on 5 homers and 100 at plate appearances. Essentially, that's 5 more than McCormick's had all season. So you like that. But you look at the career track record of Myers, and he doesn't strike me as a guy that's a special hitter. He's 28. This could be peak age for him. He might ride it crest for a month or two. I don't see this being necessarily sustainable, but again, if you need playing time and you're looking for any sort of help in the outfield, this is pretty handy right now. Looking at some of the deeper looks, he's not striking out this year. That's the thing I really like. He's down an 18.5 strikeout percentage there. That's crazy. I don't know why he's doing that, but he's making a lot better contact. He's walking about the same as he's done in the past. So it's not like he's been any more patient or anything. He's just making good contact, and you like to see that at least.
Yeah, I preach that on the podcast a lot. Like when I'm evaluating players, I do the weekly waiver wire article for Fantasy Pros, and when I'm evaluating guys that I'm looking for that can help your team in the coming weeks, one of the big things I check in on is contact, because you can't put the ball in play if you don't make contact. And if you don't put the ball in play, you can't put up counting stats. So it's one of the more crucial things. So seeing him make better contact is nice. He does weirdly have although his strikeout rate went down, his swinging strike rate went up like almost 2.5% at the same time, which is kind of odd. But again, like you said, he's finding ways to put balls in play. I don't know his roster rate. I haven't looked it up on Fantasy Pros. I guess I could check it right now, but I think it's got to be like 1% on ESPN and probably 5% on Yahoo, just because he's not 11% on Yahoo. He's just not getting added that much. And I do like him in the I like him in the short term. McCormick does worry me, but the short term, he's got the value there.
Yeah, even in deeper leagues, he was widely available in the NFBC main event this past weekend there, and it was a common pickup in a lot of those leagues. And that's a 15-team mixed league, so you're going to obviously see a little bit more availability there as opposed to like a 10 or a 12. Or currently, still only 70% rostered in the 15-team main events. Just to give you an idea of where he's at.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? How are you doing in the main event?
I started well. And the last 3 weeks have been painful. My team is just not hitting for average at all, and we haven't been able to get wins. I knew I obviously, a lot of it has to do with draft strategy, right? I didn't draft a starting pitcher until the 6th round. That pitcher was Justin Steele. My second pitcher was Peter Bybee, so I'm not really racking them up right now. Currently Evan Phillips is hurt. So I've got Jordan Romano and Daniel Hudson so I have 1.5 closers. It's tough, but that's the thing. It's the main event. There are good players in it, 15 teams, and plus an overall contest. I'm not dead or anything like that, but I was in first for a while, and now I've dropped down to like 9th or 10th on a regular basis in the 15 teams. So it's struggling a little bit, but not dead yet either.
Okay, still plenty of time.
Yeah,
I'm hoping I can get into my first main event next year. I'm gonna try and make that happen and
yeah, you
put
should.
my name out there and see how I do. The only problem is I live in Washington and they won't let us do it in Washington, so I'm gonna have to go visit my brother in Oregon to sign up for it, because I can sign up for it at least while I'm there, and then find ways to skirt around the rules.
There's a couple of states that are like that. Arizona used to be that way. I think they've finally gotten rid of that prohibition, but yeah, it's tough.
I wish they would get rid of it out here. I mean, there's ways around it, but they did the whole ask the tribal people, the tribal committees, if we can have legalized gambling, and they all said nope, we'd rather just keep it at the casinos. So you got to go to the casinos and do it if you want to do it the legal way.
Same thing is true with poker. I know Washington is one of those tough places. Even before Black Friday, it was one of those places that was super tough, and finding live poker is very difficult there too, right?
The only place that I know that has live poker is the Muckleshoot Casino out here. I did it. I mean, it's probably been 7 years, but that's like the only place that I know of that's got live poker that you can go play in the poker room.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Actually, you know what? We got 2 guys left. I'm gonna go ahead and run this real quick for you guys watching. Make sure you guys do use that code FAKEBASEBALL over at Underdog Fantasy when you sign up to get that first time deposit bonus. And also make sure you check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thefakebaseballpodcast. We put out bonus episodes that are ad-free over there every week. Me and Dylan just recorded the last bonus episode yesterday, and we set it up to be for all subscribers. So if you're free or paid, you can go check that out. It costs you $0 to go watch it. Again, that's patreon.com/thefakebaseballpodcast. And now moving on to the next one, which again is another one I've been hesitant to mention just because I don't know really how much he can offer in an extended format. But Michael Massey for the Kansas City Royals has found some recent success out there where it feels like everybody's finding success in Kansas City. Kind of a light hitting middle infielder. Do you think Michael Massey may have found a way to turn a corner and become maybe not like an elite producer of counting stats, but a serviceable guy for an extended period of time, or is this more of another short-term option here?
I think probably the latter. I think he's in a 12-team league and a 10-team league. He's a fringe player. Hasn't run yet this season. That's kind of problematic, especially when you're looking at a middle infielder. You really want to get those stolen bases. Maybe in a points league, it's a little bit different. But even then, I need to see either a little bit more power. Doesn't walk, so you're not getting any points for walks. Only 3 walks on the season, 2.8% walk percentage. The good thing for him is he's been making extreme contact this year. Only 14% strikeouts, 85% contact rate. So I like that. I don't think he's going to start against most lefties also, so you kind of have to worry about the platoon issue there just a little bit. But he's one of those Royals that's having a better year than people realize. It's one of the reasons why the Royals are doing well, in addition to their starting pitching, which is the main story for them. But the other thing about them is, they're getting contributions from some of the down ballot guys in their lineup there. That they're overachieving a little bit, and that's nice. And that helps kind of ease the pain when you see someone like, MJ Melendez really struggling. Well, at least Massey's producing.
So that's, you said they're overachieving. I do kind of agree. What the Royals feel like to me right now is similar to what the Rays felt like at the beginning of 2023, when just everybody figured out how to hit all at the same time. They're a really fun team to watch. Everybody was, I don't necessarily want to say overproducing, because some of the guys were playing up to their standards, but there was like Tyler Walls, who's not a very relevant baseball player, who was producing it at an elite level even back then. The Royals do kind of feel like that. Maybe Mike Massey is Michael Massey. I work with a guy named Mike Massey, which is crazy that it's there's 2 people named that, which is wild. But Michael Massey could be this year's Tyler Walls, which would be wild. I feel the same way. I like the contact upgrade. I do have platoon concerns. I think Garrett Hampson's been the other side of that platoon, and he's been performing okay. So short-term kind of guy. I am the same concerns about the speed, or at least not running aspect of it, because that's, if I picture Michael Massey, I'm taking at least some steals in there. None worries me a little, but
sprint speed is actually a little faster than last year too, as last year was 22.9 feet per second. Now it's 23.9. He's just not running. He's just not taking the chances. No attempts. So it's a little bit interesting, but then again, he's not hitting as many singles. He's actually had a few more extra base hits than normal. His ISO is a lot higher. So, maybe there's some trade-off there. The weird thing though, it's despite all, he's got these extra base hits than usual, but he's not elevating the ball. It's more line drive. It's more ground balls than it is line drives and fly balls. So I don't know how that all tracks, whether that's sustainable or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I see stuff like that just screams not that sustainable. It's kind of like yesterday I was talking about Seth Lugo with Nick, and he had mentioned that he has some concerns about Seth Lugo, and I'm big on Seth Lugo right now. And then the more I looked, I was like, well, I mean, he has like a 91% left on base rate. So that kind of screams not very sustainable. So the other shoe's going to drop at some point. But yeah, Michael Massey, there's a good chance he ends up in my waiver wire article for Fantasy Pros this weekend. For you guys listening that do read my stuff, he is a name that may end up in there, at least for the short term, because I do like the middle infield eligibility there. And then the last guy that I want to get to, at least it's on the show sheet, would be Masyn Winn, former top. I don't even know if I could say former top prospect, because I think it was last year was when he was the top prospect out there in Cardinals land. And good shortstop, defensive first, kind of shortstop, but he's found a way to get that hit tool to come around. This new look Masyn Winn at the plate, I feel like I keep asking you the same thing. Does it feel a little sustainable, or does this kind of feel like he's got a little luck early on?
No, I think it is a little sustainable. I think this is your classic post-hype sleeper. The guy that struggled in his first taste of the majors, 37 games last year, only hit 172. But, the thing is, he's quick. He's got a good hit tool. I feel like it showed in the minors as well. I don't think you're ever going to be a 25, 30 homer hitter or anything like that, but he's going to get lots of opportunities because he's such a good defensive player too. And that's one of the things the Cardinals desperately need. I know he made one error yesterday, but for the most part, he's been a fantastic fielder. You saw that in spring training. I think the batting average will drop a little bit. 345 BABIP doesn't seem sustainable to me, but at the same time, even if it drops to like 320, it still makes him a 285, 280 hitter. And that's something I would take every day from him, especially because you are getting a little bit of speed. You're not going to get a whole lot of power, but he's 7 for 8 on the base pass. You like that. I think there's a lot to recommend here. And I like how the Cardinals are just rolling him out there every day, letting him play. They they don't really have an option. Otherwise, that's one of the things. Just defensively at shortstop, I think it's kind of one of those situations there where they really need his defense, and fortunately, he does provide that. So I kind of like that. Sprint speed is a lot faster than say Massey, which is he was at 22 or 23%. Winn's usually 24, 25 feet per second there. So that's a little bit higher of sprint speed, which means that portends more stolen bases, which is something we're looking for here from him.
Yeah, and I like that his line drive rate has gone through the roof, just shy of 32%. One of the best things you can be when you're not a home run hitter is if you can kind of lean into those line drives quite a bit. Line drives very much help your BABIP, which obviously helps your batting average ability. So to be able to have like a 32% line drive rate while making 91% zone contact, typically that's a recipe for success, and that's not something that leans kind of into the regression side of things. I agree with you. I think this might be the Masyn Winn that we're seeing right now. And I'm going to throw you not really a curveball. I'm going to throw out one other player that I didn't put on the show sheet. I think it's somebody you've talked about recently. I like him a lot. I got a little pushback on Reddit. I post my articles on Reddit, my waiver wire ones. I answer a lot of questions on there, do AMAs, that sort of thing. And Luis Matos, I was very in on Luis Matos for this week. I still feel exactly the same way after this week of games has continued. Where do you sit with Luis Matos? Are you in on him, or are you a little hesitant on him right now?
It's so funny you asked that, because I just had Chris Torres on my podcast earlier today. We just finished recording right before this, and he was way in on him. And one thing is, he's another, like some of these other guys, he's an extreme contact hitter. He makes a lot of good he makes contact, doesn't strike out a whole lot. If you look at his minor league strikeout rates, they've always been pretty reasonable, in the low teens typically. And he's kind of maybe growing into a little bit of power. I don't know. It might be just the fact that he faced the Rockies starters this past weekend. Wasn't in Coors, but it was at home. But still, I mean, that helps. He had 11 RBI in 2 games, so that kind of jumps off the radar a little bit there. But he's only 22 years old. Also, I think he's one of those guys. I kept hearing his name for a long time. Like, oh my goodness, when's he ever going to do anything? Oh, wait, he's 22. Slow down. Just be patient here a little bit. So far, I mean, it's a very limited sample, obviously 41 plate appearances going into today. So far so good in terms of the contact rate. So far, he's only struck out a couple of times, 2.5 strikeout percentage. You like that. But even, the funny thing is he wasn't raking at AAA. He didn't really ping down the door. He got in there because Jung-Hoo Lee is out for the year. They lost a couple other outfielders as well. They did get one other one back, Soler, but at the same time, they're still down a couple other outfielders. So, but playing time is there. He's really their only center fielder left. So we'll see what happens with him. I think I didn't spend big this past weekend when fab bidding, and I kind of have a little non-buyer's remorse. I think he could help us out a little bit. I'd like to see some greater stolen base totals, similar to what he did in 2021. He hasn't really run that much since then, and that does concern me a little bit. But at the same time, you either want power or you want speed. You really don't want to go without both with an outfield spot. But I think he could develop a little bit of each.
I agree, because there's a lot of things that I like to look at under the hood as well when evaluating players. I've really kind of grown into the 90th EV, 90th percentile EV has been one of my favorite things.
Okay.
He has like 104.5 mile an hour 90th EV, which is slightly higher than league average right now. And he's pulling 15.5% of his fly balls since coming out to the major leagues, which is a big number. I think league average is right around 8 or 8.5. So he's almost double that. And even if you don't have immense power, if you're pulling a very high amount of your fly balls, you can find a way to get yourself into a few more home runs that way. Isaac Paredes, is a great example of that. The dude's got like one of the slowest bat speeds in baseball, and still just finds a way to pull fly balls nonstop. I think Luis Matos can find his way into a few of those extra home runs, and he does a few other things. I mean, he's only whiffing against 18% of secondary pitches, which is good. League average, I think, is closer to 25%, and he's making contact above average or contact above expected, like 16% contact above expected. He gets the bat on the ball. So there is a lot to like there, and he's playing, which is huge.
Yeah, and he'll be playing all year.
Ability is availability.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to play center field all year for them as long as he doesn't completely tank. You mentioned the bat speed thing, and I was wondering how much have you been able to incorporate that into your analysis so far?
Only slightly. The only one that I really feel that I like so far from my analysis is like the blast percentage, because I think that correlates the most, at least for me, that correlates the most to power, because I mean, other things like Luis Arias has the slowest bat speed in baseball, and he's getting on base at an incredible amount, leading, like he's a league leader in batting average all the time. So obviously bat speed doesn't matter for him. But then somebody like a Giancarlo Stanton, who's having a good year this year. He's been killing my Mariners lately, which sucks. But obviously Giancarlo Stanton is no longer like an elite fantasy option. And so when you see like, oh man, look at how much better he is at bat speed than everybody else, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily correlate to like these big numbers and those sorts of things. So I'm still trying to find a way to kind of correlate it, but I do like the blast percentage on contact, because like I said, I really enjoy finding the guys that at least get the bat on the ball. So when I can find the guys to get the bat on the ball and then have that higher blast percentage on contact, that's really what I've worked it in there. Have you worked it into your analysis at all much?
No, I'm more learning from others. Like Eric Holtzman has an article on the site right now, the RotoWire MLB Barometer, where he has talked about some of the early results and try to break down the various measures. I haven't really kind of grasped it yet, but I'm always a little bit. I'm a little bit of a laggard when it comes to a lot of the StatCast metrics. I'm not a troglodyte. I'm in favor of them. I'm a little slow to adopt, a little slow to kind of learn everything. Sometimes I'm kind of find myself wanting more data, and sometimes I'm just running out of time. That's the other problem. It's just like, there's just so many things you can kind of parse, the fire hose of information that we have now. It's great. I love it. Give me more info. It just, sometimes it takes me a little longer to parse it out.
I completely understand that. And then trying to find ways to work it all in when we do get the data, because like for me, I'm a writer first before a podcaster. And so trying to work all of this data into an article while also trying to be like a writer instead of just a stat pusher, but then also trying to make my articles not 4,000 words every article. It's a lot to try and do at the same time. And so when they pile more things on, like bat speed data, I'm like, well, damn, now I have to figure out how can I try and work this into where it makes sense, and it makes sense for me in my analysis of things, but then also not make it add 500 more words onto every player that I write about. It's a lot. But that's also why I like baseball. I like all of the data that comes with baseball compared to
course.
Football.
And there's no shortage of angles that we can take. I mean, you said, like you mentioned, you're a writer first, and trying to crank out content week after week after week, multiple times a week in many cases, it's tough. It's tough to have the time, and it's tough to have the ideas sometimes. It's all been done before, but no, it hasn't. That's the beauty of baseball. I mean, there's over 1,000 players we can talk about every single year, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's ever changing too. Like typically when I'm writing, I write a Tuesday article for Pitcher List. It's a Points League Paradise article. I do like a buy sell thing. Stats are changing as I'm writing, because I end up writing that like early in the morning, like while games are going. But then like my waiver wire article, I'm one of those weird people that stays up. I start writing that at like 12:30 at night on Saturday. So that all games are done and all stats are up to date and all of that before I start writing. But I enjoy the fact that it's kind of ever changing. Like somebody could be the hottest hitter in baseball this week, and then they could go 0 for 17 next week, and your analysis is going to change a little bit based on how they've been doing lately. So it's right. Baseball is just so fun.
It is.
It's hard not to enjoy it. I don't get the people that don't like it. But again, if you guys are watching this, make sure you hit subscribe or like. Jeff, tell the people where they can find you.
I talk too much, Blake. I'm on Sirius XM Fantasy Monday through Thursday from 9 to 11 a.m. Best Coast, 12 to 2 Eastern time. I'm also on Sundays from 10 to noon West Coast time. And I'm filling in for Eric this Saturday, also from 10 to 12 in the morning West Coast time as well. You catch me on the RotoWire podcast. Just search RotoWire wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll tweet it out. Hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Erickson. And I tweet out a lot. And of course, at RotoWire. And if you want to check out our work at RotoWire, you get a free trial, rotowire.com/pod. No credit card required. Just takes you get a couple days behind the paywall there, and hopefully you want to subscribe.
Yeah, go check that out. RotoWire is amazing. I love RotoWire. I listen to you on Sirius XM all the time. I was really hoping you were going to call my name for Baseball Writer of the Year this year. I huddled to the side at my day job, and I had like a group of us standing around my phone listening. Next year you'll get to call me on the phone.
You got nominated. Well, let's face it, that in and of itself is ridiculously hard to do. So congrats on that and getting recognized for your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a whirlwind of a first 4 months of this year.
Yeah.
Like that just kind of set everything into motion, and it's been an amazing 2024. And now I get to sit here and have you on the podcast talking baseball with me. So it's kind of all culminated together into this awesome experience.
Well, very good. I'm glad to have you aboard at Tout Wars, and I hope you enjoy the experience every year.
Thank you. Can't wait to go back. Make sure you guys follow us. We're Fake Baseball at Fake Baseball Pod everywhere. At Fake Baseball on X. Subscribe on YouTube. 5-star ratings and reviews help. All of these little things, even though they might not seem like much to you, they help us immensely. So just taking the 2 seconds to click subscribe, whatever, that helps a ton. And I'll be back next week on Tuesday. Dylan will be with me. We got a packed lineup of guests next week as well. So appreciate y'all for watching, and we will catch you next time.